Hey, Twisted listeners, I'm Cindy,
And I'm Diva
and this is Twisted Listeners, a podcast about murder.
and Liz.
And this is a new topic. Did I choose? I chose this topic.
Yes.
It's like a Winter Wonderland murder. Uh,
Yes.
Murders of the Rich and Famous Winter Edition, I think is what we actually called it, which I think is like way better than what I just shouted out for no reason. You said this was kind of hard to find a list, but you got a good list. I see it.
No, well, what happened was I was looking for like my mind wanted something where everyone was like in a ski resort and they were all wearing parkas and they were all like in a fucking like Santa suits. Like I wanted something really overtly wintry, and then when you suggested some that were just like during winter, I was like, oh, I've been like overthinking this.
Well, I mean, it's because the main thing, like, I want it to feel like my first case is in Aspen. When you hear
Yeah.
Aspen, you don't think about the summer, you think about the winter. And I feel like that's more what I'm looking for. It's got to be vibe. It doesn't have to be super specific, just vibey. I'm vibing. I'm vibing here.
I mean, I kind of just went for like the calendar dates, and that's what I did for the list we have because
That works.
um that's what I got. And the because of the one you have, I thought like, oh, they all need to be super wintry because yours, at least we have one that is super wintry.
Yeah. Well, I want to do the other one I want to do. I don't know if you have on here. But I'm
Mm,
going to do it. I'm not going to say what it is. We'll talk about it later.
okay.
You
Well,
might.
mine will just be murders that happen in the winter. So
But of rich people, right?
that's what I got. Yeah.
But rich people,
Yeah.
yeah. Okay. Cool. All right. Well, let's get this show on the road because we both got shit to do today.
Hmm.
Woo! Okay, so I'm
Yeah.
very excited. I'm gonna go eat food in a minute. It's gonna be fantastic. So
Perfect.
always in a hurry to do that. All right. I chose, so you go first,
Oh,
right?
so I go first.
Yeah, it's
Yes.
all you.
Um, so I realized that I picked a not that wintry place. But that's okay. It's winter, god damn it. We're in February 2014, in San Juan Capistrano. But hey,
Oh,
you know what? That is the coldest month in Southern California, I think, is like February. So we're
yeah.
doing an Orange County winter. It's like going to be like a bracing like 50 degrees maybe at worst, you
I mean,
know?
it was like 48 this morning here where I
Yeah,
am. So I'm
maybe
not
some, and we got rain at that time, so it's like pretty wintry for us. So
yeah.
fair enough.
Yeah.
But it's a ridiculous case, so that's why I picked it. So it's the case of
Okay.
Ashton Sachs, spelled. Wait, how is Saks Fifth Avenue spelled? Is it the same way?
I don't know. I can't
Fifth?
see it.
No, it's not. It is not spelled the same way. It is
Okay.
Sachs.
S.
So it's not the
Yeah.
same as
Yeah.
Saks.
That's Saks Fifth Avenue, which is funny because I love that you're doing one that's Saks and sounds like, um, Saks Fifth Avenue because mine is Nancy Pfister, but no relation to the faucets. Anyway, go on.
Oh, okay.
Sorry. Yeah,
All
no
right. No
relation.
relation to
You would
Saks.
think.
Um,
Okay.
so we're gonna talk about this family for a while because I just want to paint a picture of how crazy this family sounds.
Okay.
So Bradford or Brad, as he goes by, and Andra Sachs are 57 and 54, respectively.
Mm-hmm.
They are a super wealthy couple because that's the topic of the week.
Yep.
And they are in the real estate business primarily. They're landlords,
Mm.
Cindy.
Shut up.
Um, and they are worth around $80 million for their like
Ooh.
real estate and other business empire. Other businesses they run include an electronics company, a marketing company, a wine bar. So they just own a bunch of shit, basically.
So they're like
Um,
professional landlords. Like this is what they do is they just own property and then force people to pay them to be on it.
they're professional assholes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um,
Yes, they are. Yes, they are. Yes, they
yeah,
are.
yeah. And a lot of people said things about Andra, especially because she's kind of the actual head of the business side of things here. And a lot of people said things about Andra that they were saying as good. And in my head, I'm like, oh, that's such a red flag that she's an asshole.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
For example, Andra was reportedly a shark about pursuing investments.
Mm-mm.
And although some people kind of praised her for working her way up, from nothing because she didn't come from money, it of course helped tremendously that she married Brad because he did come from money and he poured money into all of her things.
Right, right. So she's a strong, independent
So,
woman who just happened to find like a way to get a lot of money. Okay, good
yes.
for her.
Yes. And Brad is one of those extremely Orange County type of rich guys who acts like he's like a free spirit surfer bro, but he's actually like a cold-hearted billionaire.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know?
Yeah, well those
You
guys
know that
have
guy?
yeah, they've made enough money off of other people that they can just relax and be chill while everybody else is
Yes.
like killing
Yes.
themselves. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Another friend of hers, her broker, said, quote, "Don't piss her off. Don't lie to her. She was a straight shooter. If you try to finagle her, she'd be all over you fast," which is like, oh, wow, she sounds like an asshole.
Yeah, she sounds like the
Um,
fucking worst. She sounds like the type of person who like likes being an asshole because she thinks it's like the same thing as being like a strong person. And you're like, no, you're just an asshole.
yeah.
Like, fuck off.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. I also, sorry, I didn't write this down. This is also an aside, but I had one of her electronics companies she started early on. I wanted you to tell you that she named it Minority Electronics because she's a
Are
woman,
you,
Cindy. She's a
come
white
on.
woman.
That is the most white woman shit I've ever heard in my entire fucking life. The
Minority. Yeah.
audacity. The audacity.
Oh.
Good God.
And like, are white women even a minority, like mathematically? No,
I don't know. Even if we are,
not really.
it's not enough. That's not
But even if you're looking
acceptable.
at a pie chart of people, like I don't even think you're a statistical minority.
I'm,
Anyway,
yeah, Jesus
um,
Christ. Whatever. All right.
uh, so the couple has 5 kids. Daughters Alexis 17, Lana who's 15, and sons Miles who's 21, Ashton who's 19, and Landon who's 8. They live with the 3 youngest kids who are still at home in a big old fucking mansion in San Juan Capistrano, which is a very rich person city in Orange County.
Hmm.
Um, and even Orange County is full of rich people, but that place especially is. My brother-in-law actually got married at a winery there, and so I had a recent experience there, and I was like, ooh,
Hmm.
San Juan Capistrano, that's rough. And not rough in the scary sense, rough in the like everyone's a billionaire sense.
Right, 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 right.
Um, and I just want to say their mansion was on Pepper Tree Bend, which like could not sound more like only rich people live there.
Hmm.
Um, Pepper Tree Bend. The 2 oldest brothers live in Washington State where they're going to college, and they were also basically getting trained to slide right into the family real estate business. So they were going to get like free,
Hmm.
jobs.
Hmm.
Must be nice.
Yeah.
Um, so their marriage actually, or their relationship, has a wild fucking story to it, Brad and Andrea, because after their 1-year-old daughter died in a tragic accident by falling in a pool 15 years prior in 1999 while she was under care of a nanny,
Oh
um,
no.
their relationship fell apart after that because of like the grief and shit, and they had a really bitter divorce.
Hmm.
They actually had a drawn out fight over their business holdings, over custody of the kids. At one point, they even got in a physical fight, and the police were called.
Jesus Christ. I
But
guess
weirdly, after getting officially divorced, they actually got back together.
I love that.
Like, never
Money,
mind.
proof that money cannot buy class. Like you
Yeah,
cannot. It
no.
doesn't matter how rich you are. Good
But they
God.
never officially remarried, but they were just like back together casually. And Andrea
Hmm.
liked it this way because she wanted to keep Brad out of all of her financial dealings. So they were financially pretty
Separate.
separate in the
Okay.
second phase of their
Hmm.
relationship. On the vibe of the family dynamic, a friend of Ashton's will later say, quote, "I went over there once, but I didn't go back. Something just seemed off. I didn't get a good vibe from the house. It was a mess. There wasn't anyone watching us. People were left to fend for themselves in there." So I thought that
Wow.
was interesting.
That is interesting.
Um,
For sure.
divorce, pa- divorce papers reveal that, at least according to Andra, which is a big caveat, Brad was neglectful and didn't care about the kids and had manic episodes. And Brad likewise threw all kinds of allegations at Andra that she was like psychotic and violent and had a huge temper. And I kind of feel like they're both right, honestly. I kind of feel like they both have some credence to that.
Yeah.
So part of what I wanted to, I don't mean to like, well, I'll explain in a minute, but why I'm doing this. But part of why I wanted to go into the family background is that People Magazine and 48 Hours and like lots of different media outlets covering the case are like literally to have the headline "Perfect Family, Shocking Murder," and I'm like, I don't think this is a perfect family, y'all. Like, this is a wild family, like and a lot of places are like they are living the American dream, this perfect, wholesome family. No. Just because a family's rich and white does not mean they're automatically like this perfect American dream,
Wholesome.
shining, wholesome
Yeah.
thing. Yeah, no,
Clearly not.
it's a
Clearly not.
big assumption here. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so boop 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 boop. Let's talk about Ashton here for a minute. 19-year-old Ashton.
Okay.
Perhaps a result of the tumult in his home, and we can talk about that later. He ends up living a pretty isolated, troubled, uh, let's say incel adjacent life. He spends the majority of his time playing League of Legends, which is a really, if you know that game, it's a really specific type of person that gets
Mm-hmm.
like addicted to that game. It's very yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm positive other okay, never mind, I'm getting ahead of myself. I'll circle back to League of Legends.
Okay.
Okay. He also Ashton has a history of struggling with drugs and depression. He right before this time had tried to kill himself after a breakup with a girlfriend, which I'll mention again.
Wow. That
So he's
sucks.
got some mental issues here for sure,
Mm-hmm.
and he's isolating himself. And no one gives a shit in this family, I don't think, of what he's up to. I mean, he's away from home at this point, but like this behavior had been building up for a while.
Right.
February 9th, 2014, we're just going to jump right into some pretty shocking events and
Okay.
then talk about why they happened. So Bradford and Andra were asleep in their mega mansion
Mm-hmm.
when Ashton, boop, 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 armed with a giant ass assault rifle, entered the mansion and went bedroom to bedroom, starting with fuck you, phone. Um, bedroom to bedroom, starting with his parents, and shot them with an assault rifle, like a foot
Holy
away from
shit.
their faces, multiple times at close range.
Woof. Wow.
Yeah. He also fires the gun at his sister Alexis and his 8-year-old brother Landon, but
Oh,
they both survive.
Oh, good. Okay.
The bullet did, however, hit Landon's spinal cord, and he ended up being paralyzed from the waist down.
Oh, that's so fucked.
Yeah, for some reason he didn't fire at Lana. I think her bedroom was like a ways away, so it just wasn't convenient.
Mm.
17-year-old Alexis would later describe hiding in her bed after hearing the first gunshots, which
Mm-hmm.
against her parents, and then
Right.
hearing her younger, and then she started to hear her younger brother crying out for help, and went after him
Oh.
to go get him, and he was crying and saying to her he couldn't feel his legs.
Oh, little bug. Oh, that's the
Yeah,
worst.
so horrific.
Ollie's 8.
She
Like, I hate thinking
yeah,
about that.
yeah,
Like, ugh.
so bad. And Alexis herself actually was shot at, but actually, like, literally just he missed. She dodged the bullet, literally.
Nice. Good for her. I
Thankfully,
mean,
he only
yeah.
fired into her room once, like,
Mhm.
casually. He didn't, like, go right up to her like he did with the parents.
Or his 8-year-old
Um,
brother. What a fucking
yeah,
loser.
yeah.
Ugh.
At Brad and Andra's funeral, after this happens, Ashton gave a tearful speech about his parents and broke down in tears as he talked about how perfect his parents were for each other, how they were just the most incredible people and parents of all time, how his
Mhm.
mom was his hero, blah, 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 blah. So when the authorities interview Ashton, he and his brother Miles basically said they were in Washington at the time. Miles actually was, but
Wait, so his brother
um,
and sister didn't know it was him shooting at them?
that's a good question. I don't have that resolved here. Maybe he wore a mask or something.
Yeah, it's kind of weird. Also, that is how you spell Saks Fifth Avenue. It's the same.
What?
Yeah. Yeah.
No, it is, right?
Goldman Sachs, Saks Fifth Avenue. It's all the same.
I thought it was no. It's SAKS.
Oh, it's no,
No, it's
Goldman Sachs, sorry, is the one I was thinking
oh,
of.
different Saks,
Yeah,
different
yeah,
Saks.
yeah,
I was
sorry.
thinking of the
Not Saks
Saks.
Fifth
I was thinking of
Avenue.
the department store.
Yeah, yeah. No, I
Okay.
was too, and then I was like, oh, I think it's all the same. No, it's Saks is SAKS, but Goldman Sachs is SACHS.
Oh, no relation to either. They just have
Yeah,
Orange
yeah, yeah.
County, like,
Yeah,
real estate.
money. Yeah. But that's fucking crazy. Like,
Um,
yeah, his siblings didn't know, which is like super weird.
I think he was wearing a mask or something. I'm pretty sure I read that somewhere.
Okay, that
That
makes
feels like
sense.
what it is. Because then it wasn't like Alexis immediately didn't say it was him. Otherwise, because she would have.
Right. Yeah, because she fully, yeah.
Either she didn't see or he was wearing a mask.
Okay.
Of
Hmm.
some kind. Yeah. No. Yeah, that's true. Thank you for pointing out the holes in what I forgot to research.
Just keeping us
Um,
honest over here.
It's okay. It's okay. Um, so Ashton, when they interviewed him, gave basically said it must have been a business associate of his parents. They had a lot of enemies in business, which is true,
Hmm.
and reportedly gave them a 2-page long list of suspects who he thought might have wanted to kill his mom specifically for her shady ass business practices.
Okay.
And given the financial position of the family, I mean, it's not like an insane, irrational idea. So investigators fully pursued it,
Yeah.
like the different business angles, because that's the kind where your brain would go first, right?
Right. Right.
And he also points out really angry comments after the family's or the Andrew and Brad's murder online as like citing evidence of like, look, people hate them. And so I just wanted to read you a few of those because it will give you a sense of these people. Here's one quote. Frankly, Andrew and Brad are exactly where they belong, 6 feet below the surface, being cannibalized by the same insects who they had their tenants live with in their rentals.
Oh, shit. Wow.
Um, Yeah, another person wrote about Andrea, you will have to answer to God for the evil black-hearted witch that you are. Karma's a bitch. So these are just random people about Andrea. It's on the internet.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. So they search
So
so
they're
that's
not missed.
just no.
Holy
So
shit.
just searching Ashton's phone records, they found a phone call placed to a car transportation company.
Hmm.
And when they did a little poking around, they realized that he was actually calling to request that his white Prius, purchased for him by mommy and daddy, of course,
Hmm.
um, that was stored in a storage unit at a commercial building owned by the family in Orange County. He was requesting that that be shipped up to Seattle to him.
Hmm.
And when police go bloop, bloop, bloop into that storage unit, I guess it didn't get moved, and they find the car, they find in the trunk the exact assault rifle that would later be proved forensically to be the one used to
To
kill
kill
Brad and
his
Andra.
parents. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there it is. Why didn't you throw it in a river, bro? Like, I don't know how to get away with murder corner, but hey.
Yeah.
I'm
Like,
just
what are
saying,
you
whenever
doing,
people
dude?
throw guns in bodies of water, it seems to work like really
Yeah, it's
well.
like just do that. It's like very hard to find.
Yeah,
Yeah, don't do
yeah.
that. Don't do that, murderers.
Don't do it. Don't do murders, but
Yeah. But if you do, like, don't be an
um
idiot. Okay, anyway.
when they interview him after these discoveries, and they're very sneaky, they go up to Washington and they go like, oh hey, we were just and then he lives with Miles and they go up to Miles in his house and they're like, hey, we're just poking around the area, just happen to be in the neighborhood, boop 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 boop, like, they're very like sneaky and casual, they don't like
Hmm.
let on to what they have right away.
Great.
And they interview him and they ask him, why would we possibly have video of you getting to the departures, like fucking lobby lounge of the John Wayne Airport, which is in Orange County,
Hmm.
on the day of the murder? Like, why would we have that, And he's
Yeah.
like, oh, you don't because I wasn't there. And he's like, and they're like, that's what you want to go with? That's your answer?
That's your
And he's
answer?
like, yep. And they're like, okay, you're fucking arrested, bitch. And they arrest
Mm.
him um based off they just wanted to do it in a dramatic way,
Right.
but arrest him based off the video and off the rifle in the car, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
um and they interview him some more, and with just a little more pressure he caves and confesses to everything, to killing his parents and shooting his siblings before ditching the car, and I guess putting it in storage,
Hmm.
and then catching the flight back to Washington. They said, what were you thinking when when you got in the car, headed down to California with that gun? And he says he was going to shoot his family and then kill himself. That was the original plan.
Hmm.
The investigator asked him, what's going through your mind as you're shooting them?
Okay.
Ashton said, quote, I couldn't even remember. I was just, oh, I guess in a rush. I was like, not myself. I don't know. I was something twisted.
Okay. I was
Um,
something twisted.
yeah. Uh, he also went on about kind of his motives for the murder, which, by the way, were not financial. He didn't stand to gain anything from this, money wise.
Okay. So he
Um,
just did it.
yep.
Ugh.
His motives, according to him, were that his dad was mean to him. And keep in mind, these are also people that completely bankroll his entire life. I just want to point that out.
It's
But
always kids like this. Like,
uh-huh.
I was just like, dude, fuck off.
But
Like,
his dad was mean to him. He said that they liked his other, siblings more, that Miles was the favorite brother, so
that's
he
such a
resented
weird
him.
thing that serial killers and murderers and people say a lot. Like, well, I wasn't the favorite. It's like,
Yes.
get the fuck over it. Maybe it's because you suck.
Oh,
Have a better
yeah, maybe,
personality. I don't know.
yeah, yeah, maybe it's because Miles is cooler.
Yeah.
And he also said that he was depressed from having recently broken up with his online girlfriend. So this is not a real girlfriend, it's an online one.
Online girlfriend. Jesus. Okay.
And he dropped out of school, but he had lied and not told his parents about it, so he was no longer even going to his, community college.
Mm-hmm.
Investigators ultimately were able to, with his words and, everything, prove how
Mm-hmm.
premeditated these murders were. He bought that gun weeks prior. He had been planning this for a while, and he
Mm-hmm.
drove down, which isn't the to Orange County, which is an 18-hour drive, without stopping one time. And you might be asking, how did that work? Well, he was peeing on himself, Cindy.
But how did he have enough gas? Also, that's disgusting. What a fucking idiot. Like, just pee when
I
you get
don't
gas? Like,
know.
I don't
He must have
understand.
stopped to get gas. You can't make that trip without
No.
stopping for gas.
I
I
mean,
guess he
I
didn't
had a
get out of the car.
minivan and I stopped like once. You can do it like once, but that was not as far up
Yeah.
either.
I guess he didn't go to use the bathroom because he was like, whatever, I'm covered in pee. I mean, you know what? You know what you can do, truckers do? It's like pee in a jar at least. You don't have to pee all
Just
over
pee in a
yourself.
cup. Yeah, this guy is just
Exactly.
he's just
Get
the worst.
a big gulp cup.
Yeah.
Um,
Ugh.
So he also wore gloves during the attack to like prevent fingerprints from getting on there. So he was like not really, it's not a crime of passion. Like he was taking a lot of precautions to not get caught or like not to get away with it, theoretically.
Yeah,
He
but
was
I'm just gonna
trying.
go and say that urinating on himself was not part of that. Like he did not need to do that. I just want to make that crystal fucking clear.
I mean, he was probably already used to peeing on himself while he was playing for League of Legends for like 18 hours at a
Yeah.
time. So he's probably like down with that lifestyle. I was going to say earlier too that there's a specific, like, I'm 100% positive the guy who did the Sandy Hook shooting played League of Legends. And I'm not trying to say that game makes people violent, because it certainly the fuck does not. It's not the game doing that. But there's just a specific type of guy who likes that game, and they're assholes. Like, it's just a
Right.
specific
Yeah,
person, trust me.
absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. It's not even that violent of a game. It's like
Hmm.
fantasy and shit. So, um, Oh, he also tells investigators that he was obsessed with the Menendez brothers. So like those dweebs are like his idols. They also gave tearful speeches at their parents' funerals, if you recall, and they also tried to blame the murders on their parents' business association. So
Right.
he's actually like modeling himself after the Menendezes, which is like really sad.
Which is funny because I
Um,
was just thinking about them while listening to this. I'm very
yeah,
conflicted about them. So, but
yeah, that's a different
that's
interesting
the
case.
difference. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
March 6th, 2015, I think. Ashton, or no, sorry, 2014. Ashton was arrested officially. He was charged with first-degree murder. And after a bunch of official bullshit, in 2017, Ashton was finally sentenced to 4 consecutive life terms in prison plus 100 years. The judge literally
Wow.
says, "I'm throwing the book at you 1,000,000,000%. Like fuck you." Like
Yeah.
he gives like
You
a long
shitty little
speech about how
loser.
fucked up he is. And like, look, I made a whole stink about how the parents are kind of trash people, but like,
Hmm.
even if you buy that, like, they were still supporting this kid 100%, and like, they weren't totally deadbeat parents to him. I know financial shit isn't everything. They could have been emotionally horrible for sure. Also, his siblings didn't do shit. His brother was 8, so still fuck for that alone. Fuck him.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like that's the fucked up
Uh,
part to me. Like, why are you shooting
yes.
your
Yes.
8-year-old brother? Like, what a
Yeah. Fuck
fucking
that.
asshole.
Fuck that.
Yeah.
Ashton's now 29, and as of March 2023, he posted a prisoner.com page in which he describes himself as like this great guy who loves the outdoors and sunshine and happy rosy sunshine boy. And he said he wants
Happy
to connect with a
Rosy Sunshine Boy.
and he says that he wants to connect with a woman who is fun loving, has a sense of humor, and is authentic. So, ladies, if you want, someone who shot an 8-year-old, you could hook up with Ashton here. He's on the market. And what's interesting is he puts life sentence, but he also puts that his earliest release date is 2037. And I'm like, bro, that is not your fucking release date.
Like, what are you talking
Um,
about, dude? Stop making shit up.
so if you're trying to get in a relationship with Ashton here, just know that he is not fucking getting out.
If you're
Um,
trying to get into a relationship with Ashton here, like, seek help immediately.
that
How about
that
that?
too, but I'm just that too. You know how we feel about loving serial killers and murders,
Yeah.
but in
Yeah.
general, just know that he's not getting out. That's fake.
Okay.
Um,
All right.
And lastly, last point here, Landon. There's a couple news stories about how the surviving siblings have like bonded together and like helped each other out. And Landon, although he was left, like I said, paralyzed from the waist down after his shit ass brother shot him, he's
Mm-hmm.
actually thrived and done really well. He's
Good for
become
him.
a huge star in the sport of wheelchair tennis, which is like very impressive when you think about it. Because I fucking struggle at tennis standing. I can't play tennis worth shit.
Yeah, that's
Um,
crazy.
and he's getting wants to get a college scholarship to play wheelchair tennis. He's like a pro at it. So
That's awesome. I also love that he still was able to like maintain a rich hobby.
yeah,
Sorry.
that's true. I mean, his name is Landon. He's like, look, my name is Landon. Am I gonna not play tennis?
Yeah, like
Nothing's
I
gonna
got it.
stop me.
Nothing's
Like,
gonna stop the tennis. You cannot stop the
no.
tennis. No.
If your name is Landon, you got to play
Well,
tennis.
good for
Like,
Landon and his tennis dreams. I really do hope that he fulfills them because I think
yeah,
obviously having money doesn't make you like a successful, happy person necessarily. And his brother was a piece of shit. His parents sound problematic, and he's still like
yeah.
persevering. And I think that's really cool. So
And lots of people, even though they come for money, end up like the Ashtons, where they're just sitting in a basement playing video games, wasting away their life. You
hating
know?
their parents for whatever reason they can think up to
Yeah,
make themselves the victim in the situation. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. So good for
So
Landon. Well, cool.
yeah.
Okay, I'm just gonna hop right into my story. This is another socialite situation here. Um, I watched the Dateline on this, and I really enjoyed it. But I think Dateline is, I feel like they have to be kind to certain people in order to like
Hmm.
get the family members and friends of those people to do interviews and agree to like be on the show. So I definitely watched the Dateline, but I also did a lot of independent research and reading. And I've come to my own
Okay.
conclusions here and I'm going to share them. So
Great.
this is the story of Nancy Pfister, Pfister, just like
Hmm.
the price Pfister, you know, all the what are those sinks, like the faucets and things.
Yes.
So, no relation, just so you know, but she is also rich. So, another no relation, but having a rich last name, which is somehow feels like there has to be a connection.
Right?
You know?
Yeah.
Like, how is that just like a weird
Sachs
coincidence?
and Fister just feel like
Yeah,
rich people names.
they
It's giving
do.
me the vibes.
They do. We've got the vibes going. This is what I wanted. So, she was
Hmm.
born on the 4th of July in 1956 in
Okay.
Orofino, Idaho, and she was raised in Basalt, Colorado. I don't know how you say it. It's a suburb of
Okay.
Aspen, essentially. And
Okay.
she grew up on a cattle ranch that her father owned. And he, in her early life, turned this into the Buttermilk Ski Resort. So, like when she was like 2 years old, he turned this cattle ranch into a ski resort. And he made tons of money, tons and tons of money doing this. Her mother, Betty Haas Pfister, was an American aviator. She was a part of the Women Air Force Service Pilots, also known as WASP, in World War II. And she later flew a helicopter. And her big thing in Aspen, the thing that they were all known for, was that she would park it in their front, like on their, in their driveway. She would like land the helicopter in front of their
Okay.
house. So that was her like quirky rich lady
Wow.
cool thing that she did. So these are Nancy's parents. Nancy was
Okay.
raised with lots of money as like a mountain woman. She loved to travel. She was extremely boisterous, fun loving. She drank, she smoked, she loved to party. She had a daughter when she was 29, had her on her own. She was not married, raised her without the help of the father. I read somewhere that she had another child, but I can't find anything about this second child. So
Okay.
weirdly, they're kind of like a footnote in the story. But that child she also had without a husband. She was never married. She would fall in and out of love. She had lots of relationships that were very passionate and like extreme, but also very short lived.
Okay.
She was like a local celebrity in Aspen. She was one of those like everybody knew her. If you hung out in Aspen, you knew Nancy. She was on TV giving tours of Aspen. She was, just everywhere all the time. I don't believe that she had a job because she had money from her parents. She was given like an allowance and she lived on the ranch, like at Buttermilk, at the ski resort in a home. She had, kind of like, it wasn't like this crazy big mansion or anything. It was like a pretty modest, probably like 4-bedroom home, like for Aspen modest, like seeing photos
Okay.
of it, it looked like any other ski
Not a
town, like
mansion.
resort town, it had like almost
Yeah.
like not like shiplap on the outside, but it was not like a big fancy thing. It was a pretty standard house.
Okay.
So Nancy also rubbed elbows with the rich and famous during her time. She was fucking beautiful when she was like growing up, when she was like in her 20s and 30s. Like she was absolutely fucking gorgeous.
Yeah.
And, Jack Nicholson came to town. Um, oh my God, what the fuck? Kirk Douglas what's his Michael Douglas.
Mm.
Michael Douglas came to town. She was actually briefly engaged to Michael Douglas. So like
Oh.
definitely hanging out with the rich and famous. And like Jack
Yeah.
Nicholson has a house in Aspen and she did this TV tour. She's like, this is, Jack Nicholson's house and like all the rich and famous people. But she was very like treated everyone the same. She wasn't like a kiss ass to celebrities. She was just like a really fun, you know, fun loving, people were just drawn to her. So she was very, very well known. Now, the flip side of that is that Nancy was very opinionated and not afraid to speak her mind. And she was also rich. So she grew up with a certain expectation for people and would treat people a certain way that some people didn't like. Now, for instance, she had a friend. What the hell is her name? Kathy? Is that her name? Where's your name, Kathy? No, it's not Kathy. Oh, it is Kathy. It's Kathy Carpenter. I was like, it's not double C. Anyway, so her friend Kathy was a bank teller in Aspen, and Nancy started talking to her and decided they were going to be friends. She asked her out to breakfast, and Kathy accepted because everybody knows Nancy and she's fun and whatever. Their first meeting, Nancy told Kathy she was fat. She was like, "You're really fat, and you should do something about that."
All right.
Yeah. And
Okay.
in interviews with Kathy, even when though she's trying to kind of paint Nancy in like a nice light, you can tell that Nancy basically befriended her so that she'd have like an assistant, like somebody she could boss
Hmm.
around, somebody she could tell to do things. I'm going out of town. Can you feed my dogs? Can you check on the house? Like, can you clean this for me? Like, there was
Yeah.
definitely a
Yeah.
hierarchy, and she saw Kathy as less than her because Kathy worked for a
Hmm.
living, didn't make a lot of money. So there was kind of that imbalance in their relationship. And that was very much how she was with a lot of people. She had pissed a lot of people off in Aspen. People would say that they couldn't stand her, but then they would also hang out with her because she was almost like a mean girl, I want to say, in a way. Like
Yeah.
everybody
Yeah.
wanted to hang out with her, but they also like resented her because she was so popular and nobody maybe
She's the
actually.
popular girl at school, but like forever.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like half the people didn't really like her, but they all kind of wanted to be her or be around her. So it created complicated feelings for people. So anyway, that's kind of her vibe and situation. Now, in what year was it? 2014. Actually, the end of 2013, Nancy decides that she's going to go to Australia for the winter. She's going to go hang out there, do her Christmas there. She traveled all the time. Now, the flip side of this was Nancy was actually kind of running out of money. She didn't have a ton of money in the bank. She kind of squandered it. Again, she didn't really work. She was basically like a playboy, but a woman. And so
Yeah.
she was getting a little low on funds. So she put an ad in her local paper. Um, advertising her home for rent. Now, her idea was she was going to rent it out while she was gone. So at least then she
Okay.
wouldn't be, she'd sort of be paying for her trip using an asset that she had to create income. Makes sense, right? The people who reached out to her were a couple named Trey and Nancy Styler. Now, they were about 10 years older than Nancy. Nancy at this time was 56. So Trey and the other Nancy here, his wife, Styler, were in their 60s. And they had met in Wichita, Kansas. Trey was a doctor. Nancy was like an instructor who worked at the hospital, I guess. And they fell in love. They were super smart, super successful. But they were also very manipulative and kind of controlling, and like Nancy in particular. So people also had mixed feelings about them. Now, they lived in a really nice house in Kansas. They built it together, and they were weirdly world renowned for their growing of the Victoria water lily, which is like
Oh,
very, very much like a rich person thing, right?
it really is, yes.
Yeah, yeah. So, unfortunately, in the year 2000, Trey had become ill and had to stop practicing medicine. And the couple had such a like kind of fancy, high level lifestyle that they started to run out of money like pretty quickly. And in 2000, what was it? In the mid 2000s, sometime, they were investigated for insurance fraud because mysteriously, both of their cars exploded within like a 3-year period. And they collected
Mm,
insurance on those cars. Now, we have this weird exploding car thing. We have this lack of money. They're trying to keep up appearances, keeping up with the Joneses kind of deal. And
yeah.
so things were a little bad for them. Nancy was also charged with assault after beating a waitress in a restaurant, which is so fucked. Like, what the fuck? Like, what could have possibly happened that you would assault a waitress? You know what I mean? Like, so
Mm,
they're kind of wild. She was given 2 years
yeah.
probation and had to pay the victim's hospital bills, which the woman went to the hospital. Like, what the fuck is going on? Right?
That seems like a fair punishment. Like,
Right? Yeah. So next, the couple were nearly fatally poisoned by carbon monoxide. I said carbon monoxide because that's a friend of mine who's a tattoo artist who did
carbon
my.
monoxide?
That's
That's
her
a great
name.
name.
Isn't that so good? Her name's
Yeah,
Carmen, and she goes by Carmen Monoxide. She's the one who did my some regrets tattoo.
that's a
Um,
great,
it's a
like,
really good name.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
she's such a badass. She's an artist. You guys should look her up on Instagram. She's awesome. So
That's
anyway,
cool.
they were nearly fatally poisoned by carbon monoxide in a apartment they were renting, and so of course attempted to sue for that, but lost because it's probably also fucking fraudulent. And so they're running out of money. They're running out of options. They still had some money, so they decide they're going to move to Colorado and open a spa. So in the summer of 2013, they sold their home in Kansas, which actually got them a good chunk of money to kind of start over. And they began staying with friends in Denver. And then in mid September, moved into Nancy Pfister's home. Now, Nancy was still living there, but she was the type of woman who was very welcoming. Come over, come in, stay with me. You can stay before I leave. But then
Yeah,
but let do things for me. Like I'm helping you out, so can you clean my garage? I'm giving you a place
right.
early, so can you feed my dogs? It was also
Yeah,
manipulative.
transactional. Yeah.
Hmm. Very transactional. So now we have these two kind of like forces of nature, powerful, rich, manipulative people kind of together in a
Mhm.
space. Nancy left pretty quickly, and so I don't think anything happened that went sideways while they were all living together. But as soon as Nancy left, the other Nancy, the Stylers, Nancy and Trey, started complaining about the house, started complaining about the oven's broken, the thermostat's not
Mhm.
working, this, that, and the other. Any little thing they could find. That's not a little thing, like the oven should work. But they started withholding rent. And the thing is, they didn't point any of this out while Nancy was still there, while they were staying there with her. They waited until she left, and then they started being like, there's all these issues. We're not going to pay you rent. And it got to the point they were paying, I think, $4,500 a month, something like that. And they paid her 6,000 in the end, but they withheld that money for months while she was away in Australia arguing with them. Now, during this time, she was telling her good friend Kathy, who, like I talked about their relationship, telling her about these issues that she was having with this couple, that they were arguing, they were withholding money. She wanted to evict them. And she actually ended up coming home from her trip kind of abruptly in late February. So February 22nd, I believe, is when she came home. And she
Okay.
had Kathy pick her up from the airport and drive her home. Kathy had also been looking after her dogs and basically just being the caretaker for Nancy. Now, at the
Okay.
time that Nancy came back, the Stylers had already moved out. Nancy had been like, y'all need to get the fuck out. And they were like, fine, we're leaving. They moved out. They went to like a hotel and they were staying in a hotel temporarily. But they had left a bunch of their stuff at Nancy's home. And Nancy had given them like a couple of weeks to get it before she came home. But when she came home, she's like, fuck this. She started locking the door during the day while she was gone. So Nancy did actually have a job as like a tour guide, of course. So like the easiest, she-shiest job you could get. And so when she was doing that job, she'd lock the door and change the lock so like the Stylers couldn't get in. So they would come to try to get their stuff and they couldn't get it. So it was this big
Yeah.
contentious thing, right? Meanwhile, Kathy is, helping her out, hearing her complain about these people and just kind of being her support system. Now, uh, February 26th, 25th, 2014, the Stylers called this friend Kathy and they said, we've been trying to get into the house for like 3 days now. We can't get a hold of Nancy. We can't get our stuff. The door is locked. We need you to let us in. So Kathy's like, that's really weird. She goes over the next day on February 26th, 2014, and she goes into the house and she can't find Nancy. She goes into the
Okay.
main bedroom and she sees the bed is in disarray. It's not made. There's, the bedspread's kind of like onto the ground. And she's like looking for Nancy. She can't find Nancy. The dog is there. It looks like it hasn't been fed. It's like desperate for water and food and attention. She goes to open Nancy's closet. She's just kind of looking around and it's locked. And she thinks that's really weird because Nancy would lock the closet when she was out of town. But when she got home, she'd unlock it because she was home and it was her stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
So she has a skeleton key, Kathy here, and she uses this to unlock the closet and she finds a big, you know, mass on the ground with a sheet over it. And she
Mm.
runs out of the house, gets into her car because she doesn't have good cell service. And as she's driving down the road, she calls 911. Now, her call to 911 is extremely hysterical, like over the top, screaming,
Yeah.
crying, can't make sense of what she's saying. They ask her to pull over. She's like hyperventilating, but she gets out that she saw Nancy's dead body in the closet. And not only that,
Okay.
but she immediately says, she has this couple that have been staying there that she's been having issues with. I don't know if that has anything to do with it, but oh my God, come help my friend. So
Yeah.
the police come and they find not a body necessarily, but just something wrapped in a sheet. And they pull the
Okay.
sheet back, and there is Nancy Pfister. And Rory came into the room, and when I said Pfister, he looked at me because he's 12. Um, she was dead, and she had been beaten on the head and face. And it was later found that she'd been beaten on the head and face with a hammer, which is fucking
Mm.
crazy. Also, possibly a lamp, but I didn't really see much about that. Just that police initially thought it may have been a lamp that beat her. So
Okay.
she's in the closet. She's tied up. She's got, these sheets around her. And the way that her body is in there, police quickly decide that it was more than one person who attacked her because the way the body was moved, it would have been very difficult for a single person to move her because,
Yeah.
as one detective said, they call it dead weight for a reason. Your weight is much heavier when you're
Yeah.
unconscious or dead than when you're actively being
Like
carried.
a sack of potatoes.
Exactly. Exactly. So they start, investigating. Immediately they look into the Stylers, and the Stylers are like, we were at a fucking hotel. Like, we don't know what you're talking about. Like, we called her friend trying to get in, yada, yada, yada. So things go back and forth between, the police looking into the Stylers and the police just kind of looking at all the people that may have wanted to kill Nancy. And they even interview Nancy Styler and they're like, well, we've heard that there's no love lost between you. And she's like, yeah, absolutely. Like, I've said I could kill that woman. She's like, but I mean, people say things like that all the time and don't expect this to happen and then it to come back to bite you in the ass, you know? So Trey Styler, police go hard on him from the beginning. They're like, why'd you do it? We know you did it. He's like, I am so fucking frail and fragile and ill. Like, I could not have killed her. And the truth is, like, if you look at these interviews, he looks like he's like 80 years old and he's like a skeleton.
Yeah.
Like, he is so fucking
Mm,
sickly and old looking that you kind of have to go, you probably didn't do it. Or if you did it, you didn't do it by yourself,
yeah.
right?
There's some legitimacy to what he's saying.
There
Yeah.
absolutely is. So now they're looking at both of them, both of the couple, both Nancy and
Okay.
Trey, and they take polygraphs and they fail them. So
Mm,
pretty bad. However, they can't use DNA against them. They lived in the house for 5 months. So if they find
right.
DNA, it's like, yeah, we lived there. Like you can't,
Yeah, duh.
they
Of
don't have a
course
murder
yeah.
weapon. They don't have anybody who saw them. There's no camera footage, nothing. So the case is kind of at a standstill. Now, a couple of months later, a man is taking out the trash behind the hotel where they are staying. And he notices something kind of weird. I forget what it was, but basically the guy was being like a Karen. And he was being like nosy. Like
Mm-hmm.
there was something in the trash that wasn't supposed to be there. And this guy is like, I'm going to look into this and get somebody in trouble for like throwing something away they're not supposed to because Aspen, right? So he
Yeah.
opens up the trash and in it he finds, I think it was like some sort of identifying document for Trey Styler, the bloody hammer, and then an identifying document of Nancy
Didn't even
Pfister's.
wash the hammer.
Didn't even watch the hammer. So these three
Okay.
things are thrown away together in a bag that is noticeably sticking out in the trash,
Does
which
it
is
have a
like
label on the side being like murder
murder
stuff?
stuff. Yeah,
Like
there fucking should have been. And of course, it's like literally the trash can that Trey and Nancy would be
mm-hmm.
using staying in their hotel. So they are
Yeah.
arrested. They're both charged with murder. And they're fighting it. They're in jail. And police start to kind of look into what they're saying. And they start to think like maybe Nancy wasn't involved. Maybe Nancy Styler wasn't involved. And they start looking at the facts of the case. And they're like, okay. They listen back to the 911 call of Kathy Carpenter. And they realize as they listen to it that it sounds fake. And they start
Mm,
doing like an analysis of this and they find, I guess, what's called like, they find 19 like points of guilt where she's like acting in certain ways that people act when they are calling in false 911 calls. Like the
yeah.
husband calls in his dead wife, but he's the killer. So she did a lot of
Mm-hmm.
things that made them very, very suspicious of her. Namely, in the middle of her panic where she can barely even say her name, she has the presence of mind to mention this couple as like her theory as to
Mm-hmm.
who killed her friend, right?
Yeah, there's
Then,
always like a lot of specific information given too soon. Like,
yes.
but I'm hysterical, but I'm hysterical. But like, here's a lot of specific names.
Yeah, like I can't even
Yeah,
drive my car. I'm so freaked out, but I'm going to be like, "Hey, by the way, look into this couple." Like in the moments
yeah,
after the death. They're also
yeah,
kind of like, how convenient is it that there's identifying documents for the victim, the supposed murderers, and the murder weapon all together in the trash by their house in a way that it sticks out and is visible? So police and prosecutors are like, we feel like this is a setup. We feel like Kathy is involved. And they fucking arrest
yeah.
her and they charge her with first degree murder. And they look at like her relationship with Nancy was very like, you know, contentious. Like she was treated like shit. She was treated like a maid. The other Nancy, Nancy
Yeah,
Styler, comes forward and is like, yeah, she treated me that way. She treated Kathy that way. I saw her treat Kathy that way. But she never goes as far as being like, so Kathy and I plan to kill her, nothing like
right,
that.
right.
So they have all three of these people and they're trying to build this case. They really just have like their best guess at what happened, but I don't think they're necessarily wrong. In the midst of all of this, Trey comes forward and he asks to speak to prosecutors and he confesses to the entire crime and he said that he did it himself. And he confesses to this in
Hmm.
return for all the charges being dropped against Nancy, his wife.
Oh, okay. Is he
Mhm.
just doing that though, just to be cool, or
I think so. And it
okay?
really muddies the waters here. So they eventually drop all the charges against Kathy because he's not turning on her. The other Nancy's not turning on her, and they don't have any evidence. It just seems real fucking
Uh,
suspicious. For the
yeah,
record, Nancy Pfister's family believes that Kathy is completely innocent. They are friends with her. They are all like still
Wow.
in contact with each other. Um,
Interesting.
yeah. So I don't know, but Trey, so he confesses, his wife gets off, Kathy gets off, and he's given like a life sentence. He's already in his fucking
Yeah.
late 60s and whatever.
Yeah. Yeah.
So he goes to prison. Nancy Styler is freed. Um, Kathy is freed. Weird things happen after this. So Nancy Styler eventually um, files for divorce against Trey. And as soon as the divorce is finalized, Trey commits suicide. Now, Nancy had a really old life insurance policy that she had taken out on Trey. And it was so old that there were not any stipulations about suicide. So as soon
Okay.
as he killed himself, she was allowed to get that money. Now, here's what I find fucking weird, and going back to the manipulation of Nancy Styler. She had filed for bankruptcy just before he killed himself. So filing for bankruptcy protected her from having to give that insurance money to her creditors. So it's all very convenient.
Oh.
They get divorced, she files for bankruptcy, he kills
Oh
himself,
my
she gets the insurance.
God.
And what I'm wondering is, did she convince him to do this for her?
It feels like she did. Yeah.
Did she convince him to take the fall and then convince him to kill himself so she could be set up for the rest of her life? Would he do
It
that for
feels like
her?
she did.
It does,
That's
right?
fucking wild.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the one piece that I can't decide is like, was Kathy involved? Was this all Nancy Styler? Was Nancy the one in the room helping Trey? Was it Kathy and
Yeah.
Nancy and Trey was the fall guy? Like, who really did this?
Yeah.
It's a trip. Like, who did it?
It is.
It makes me wonder. But
It feels like Nancy did everything.
it really does, right? It really does.
Yeah.
Or it
I
could have
don't
been
know.
Nancy and Kathy because it was probably two people.
Yeah.
Police said the way the body was carried, it
Mhm.
had to be more than one person. Oh,
I feel like this guy's just being manipulated.
he is. Here's another thing I forgot about Kathy.
Yeah.
Another thing that makes Kathy seem real fucking guilty. She described how she saw Nancy's body in the closet. She described seeing her hair and knowing that it was
Mhm.
her. Her hair was not visible. Her body was not visible. And if you look
Mm,
at a photo of it, it's not even obviously a body. It just looks like a
yeah.
big pile of sheets on the ground. She
Yeah. She
later
shouldn't
said,
necessarily known that.
yeah, she later said it was the smell that let her know. And the body had been there for probably 2 days. But
Right.
it's
But
just
at most, you should know
real.
it's a body. You shouldn't be so definitive
Yeah. And you shouldn't be
that,
like, I saw her
yeah.
hair. Because cops are like, well, then did you cover her back up?
Mm,
And she maintains she never
right.
touched the body. And they're like, well, then you didn't see her hair. Like, what the fuck? So very suspicious. I have no idea. My best guess is that it was fucking Kathy and Nancy Styler, and they fucking
Yeah.
killed Nancy Pfister, and then Trey took the fall because Nancy, his wife, convinced him to. And he's like, I'm sick, I'm old, I'm gonna
He
die
seems like,
anyway.
even with his suicide, it seems like a long-term con on Nancy's part.
It does.
Styler's.
It does. Yeah.
Also, did you see that Nancy Styler wrote a book
I was just
about
gonna talk
this?
about that. Yeah.
Okay,
And
sorry.
here,
I was
no,
on
it's
Amazon
fine.
looking at
Yeah,
this.
yeah, no, no, no. So she wrote a book about it. It was not well received. And weirdly, Kathy and Nancy Pfister's family came out and actually tried to get the book to like stop the book from being published.
Mm,
So, yeah. When she was filing for bankruptcy, she had already written that book, but she had assigned it no value because they were like, we don't know if anybody's going to buy it or not. And I
oh
think it
my
was like a
gosh.
total fucking flop. But
Yeah.
in that
It looks
book,
legit. Like the cover looks good.
no, I think she got somebody to publish it, like legitimately. It wasn't like a
Yeah.
self-published
Yeah.
thing. But it is very tasteless because she portrays Trey, who, according to this narrative, is the murderer. She portrays him as this like hero, and she talks a ton of shit on Nancy Pfister. She has no qualms about like speaking ill of the dead. You know
Wow.
what I mean? Like, so very classless move, like very gauche move on her part. But anyway,
Yeah.
she's living large with her husband's insurance payout,
Wow.
enjoying her retirement and not being in prison for this murder. So
So worked out for Nancy Styler, I guess.
I guess it did. So that's
Yeah.
it. That's my story.
Ooh.
I know. I enjoyed this one. I was really happy I picked this one. This case was the
Rich
reason I
people do
chose this.
crazy murders.
They
Rich
do, and they
people do
fucking get
crazy
away
murders.
with it like a lot. So
Yeah.
yeah. Anyway, guys, thanks for listening. Sorry to cut this a little bit short, but we both got to get out of here. We'll be back in a couple
Yes.
days with the next half. And hopefully it'll come out. I'm hoping we can get it out right after Thanksgiving.
Yeah, for sure.
Or we can even do it on. Like, I don't fucking care. Like, I'm just gonna
We'll figure it out.
whatever. Yeah,
Yeah.
we'll figure it out. Anyway, we'll have in a couple days. Sit tight, enjoy the holiday if that's your thing. And until the next half,
Stay.
off our
Let's.
Bye.
Bye.